and welcome to another edition of Tough Talk. I'm Medina Azaki. Our focus today is on the 100 days achievement of the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, His Excellency Engineer A.A. Sule. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations on your 100 days in office. Is it 100 days now or 150?
Almost 115 now.
Okay. Before we go into that, for a lot of people, especially first timers like yours, they get a handover note, and when they resume office, the reality on ground doesn't reflect the handover note. You just realize that the enthusiasm wears off, the excitement vanishes, and then the person starts asking himself, I didn't bargain for this. In your own case, did the reality on ground, the handover note, did it reflect the reality on ground when you resumed office as the executive governor?
First and foremost, I think in our own case, I am a little bit luckier than so many other states in the fact that we had what we call a practical handover. My own handover didn't happen on the day of the handover. It happened at least 45 days before the handover. So the governor took me physically to nearly every one of these locations and then explained to me what the projects were, where they were at the projects, how much was paid, how much needed to be paid, and then period the project will be completed and the rest of that. Now, there were a few other places where I expected worse situations, in the areas of payroll, for instance. Pensioners' monthly payments, for instance, and the rest of that. So when I came in, I realized that, well, I was only a little bit in a better position not to pay them just 50% of the pension. So I started paying 100% of the pension. Also, the salaries were in the local government areas. I realized that, no, we could afford to pay 100%. So we are paying them 100% instead of the 50% that we were paying. All that we were trying to do to make sure that we set up. So in a nutshell, I think what you are asking is surprises. So far, so good. I have not had any surprises yet.
If you're going to be very sincere, how much debt was left for you?
The debt is controversial in the sense that, you see, the outgoing government didn't really take any particular debt that they didn't pay. Nearly every debt they had taken in form of either overdraft or bond, they had paid for them before coming. But they inherited some of them as old as Plateau State. And a lot of them are running close to 70 billion and the rest of that. And some of them were a lot of questions on them. Some of them were contractors' payments, that the jobs, whether completed or not, we're not sure. That's why I say they were controversial. But in our books, those were the kind of debts that we made on ground. The next is area of the outstanding gratuity and the outstanding pension and some salary areas. All those I was informed, I was told, and I knew about them before coming in. So those ones, again, our gratuity and pension also are in the neighborhood of almost about 30 billion. So, and as I said, that's what I was told before I came in. So those were the kind of debts we had, but we didn't have some big debt from banks that were owing, commercial banks or central bank or the rest of that. So we didn't have those kind of debts.
All right. Now let's go to the 100 days proper. Now, according to media reports during the stakeholders meeting that you had where everybody was around, your predecessor, Senator Tanko Almarkura, he described you as industrious, committed, and highly focused. He said your most outstanding achievements are sustaining the tempo of peace and security, which is fundamental to national development. He also talked about welfare of the workers, and he also talked about your vision to industrialize, the state. And he did call upon people to give you all the support that they can. But for you, which one stands out for you? All of those achievements. I do know that during your inauguration speech, you talked about rural electrification. I think it was a 14-point. Agenda. But which one stands for you?
I think the number one that stands out is actually the area of security. Security, I think, is the first focus for us in Nasarawa State. We are surrounded by states that had always had security challenges. Nasarawa State is neighboring Kogi State, Benue, Taraba, Plateau, part of a little bit of Kaduna, as well as the Federal Capital Territory. And each one of these places I had mentioned will have one kind of challenge or the other, including the FCT because of the situations we had recently with the El's executive group that were living actually in Nasarawa and then coming into Abuja. So when we were able to maintain the level of security within the state, irrespective of the political differences that we have had in the state, I think that one stands out. The next area actually is the area of empowerment. We have been very lucky. We have had a lot of support from some donor agencies and then development partners, and we have been able to do a lot of empowering since we came. So people are beginning to have something to do in the state. And I think that also helps in maintaining the level of peace that we are having in the state. So I think these two areas stand out.
For you to industrialize the state, you need a whole lot of power, and a lot of people will be looking out for what will be the specifics when it comes to power generation, especially rural electrification. So what happened?
Power, it depends on the kind of industry you have. A lot of people misunderstand it, but talk about power. Let's even talk about the power itself. In Nasarawa State, we just had the substation that is being built, by the Niger Delta Power Company. And that is almost completed, and it will be commissioned in December. It's 330 kV line that is going to be dropped in Nasarawa State. When that is commissioned, we shall have most of our power challenges resolved in Nasarawa State. But now, going back to the point I started with our power, let's take, for instance, the very first industry we are going to have in Nasarawa State, the Dangote Sugar Factory. Do they really need power from the national grid? Maybe not. Part of the sugar plantations is actually to also produce its own power from the bagasse that they are producing. So, and the company, since I was part of the design from the beginning, is going to be generating about 96 megawatts of power. And the company only needs roughly 48 megawatts of power that they will be using. So the balance is what will even be sent, either to the national grid or to the neighboring communities. So those are the kind of companies, agro-based companies that have the capacity to generate their own power. But we are also looking at generating power from two sources in Nasarawa State. We are capitalizing on the fact that we have a lot of coal, coking coal in Obi local government area, and we are talking to GE to assist, and come and partner with us in the area of turbines that will be producing from coal. And we are just constructing, we just commissioned the flag of the construction of the road to Falurua, where also hydropower will be generated. In addition to that area, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources is building a dam in that location. And that dam is also for hydro power. So we are approaching power from different directions.
Including the renewables?
Yes, renewable energy, the one that we mentioned, earlier on, as far as from bagasse, that is renewable energy. We are talking about solar, that we are also having all the power we have in the rural areas. Most of the electrification of the rural areas, are actually solar power, so which is renewable energy, that we are discussing.
For most stakeholders, they kind of judge a government successes to having its cabinet in office, on time, inaugurating its cabinet on time. It's 115 days today. Why is it taking you so long? That is one. And two, is there a rift between you and Predecessor as far as the cabinet is concerned?
Well, I don't know how you can rate a government based on its cabinet. The former administration of before now, the previous administration of the current president took over 6 months before he even appointed a cabinet. Yet he appointed a cabinet that had worked very, very hard on ensuring everything was there. Today, people are rating us, like you mentioned. They rated us on security. Are we going to have commissioner for security, which was our biggest challenge in Nasarawa State? Evidently not. Are we going to have commissioner for industrialization, which is an area that we are doing? Evidently not. So these are the kinds of things that I'm saying. So people just talk about them. A lot of people who push about all this cabinet are people who have interest in being part of the cabinet. And so they find a way to go through the media and then promote cabinet as if it's a major thing that has to be there before you run a government. I think every ministry has a permanent secretary. The real people moving the ministries are actually the permanent secretaries. It's not even if a commissioner comes in tomorrow, it will take the commissioner a while, to be able to understand, unless he's a commissioner who has been working in such places in the past. So the many people who are there are going to be the directors and the permanent secretaries who have always driven
some of this. But in an ideal situation, in developed democracies, you have your cabinet just 1 week. So why are we behind?
No, it's, I live in developed societies all my life. All my career life, I live in developed societies. And when they appoint those cabinets, they have the funding, they have the resources, they have the experienced people who have that, and so today over 20 governors have not appointed cabinets. In Nigeria, out of 36. So over 50% of the governors have not appointed cabinet. No, it's not deliberate. You have to get all your structures correct. You have to make sure you have the right people, which brings me to the next point that you made, whether there is any rift between me and the former. In Nasarawa State, for instance, when we came in, the first thing we did was to say that we have 18 ministries. Can we afford 18 ministries? We say maybe not. So we set up experienced technocrats to come in and find a way to review our civil service. By the time they finished reviewing, they came up with 13 ministries. So if we had appointed 18 commissioners in 1 week after we came, and now we have suggestion about 13, what are we going to do? To fire the rest of the 55? So we appointed that, and they finished their review about a month ago. Then we appointed another committee, which is similar to like a white paper of former permanent secretaries at the federal level, who are from Nasarawa State, who had experience in this. They reviewed, and they also agreed with the 13 ministries. So which means we are appointing 13 commissioners. Locally for us, we have 13 local government areas. So every local government has it by right. So that's why I'm telling you that you take the proper focus. You take one step at a time to be able to do that. We are just in that process. So at what point will I have any rift or any problem with my predecessor? Because we just started we started the process. We have not identified this will be a commissioner, this will not be, this will be, this will not. We have not even gotten to that.
So how long will it take for you to have a cabinet in place? Is it going to take another 6 months?
No, not really. I think in the next 1 to 2 months we shall have our commissioners in place.
Okay. Now the federal government is saying that the 614 billion bailout of fund that it did give the state now is going to collect it back, and for you, a first timer who has a lot of vision, are you worried that that's going to slow down all of those dreams that you have?
It will not slow down all the dreams, but I'm worried. Yes, I'm worried. The deduction is going to commence, and that's why we discussed it at the Governors Forum, whether it was the right thing to do. So it came of course in June. We pleaded, for a little more moratorium in order to even understand it. And the federal government was kind enough to allow us to do that all the way to August. So the idea, coming from the private sector, I believe in accountability. So if it was given to the states in form of loan, not grant, and it will be deducted back, that's accountability. It should be deducted back. I don't have any problem with that. But the other aspect of it, some states are worried about the utilization of those amounts. Nasarawa, we may not be that too worried. The reason being, when the oil prices came down to less than $30, we know that no way on earth Nasarawa State could pay their salaries. Okay? So you have to have the bailout. So the bailout was what came, and the budget support that came to support the government to be able to even sustain the payment of civil servants and the rest of that. So that's what happened in Nasarawa State. None of that money went to any capital projects. You just went to the stomach. That's what it is, stomach infrastructure.
How much is your wage bill as it is today?
Our wage, it depends on which one it is, because today we are separated. The local governments are independent. So our wage bill is almost 50-60% of our entire allocation.
Okay, so you still have 40 for other projects. All right. Now, the headless farmers clashes. Nasarawa State is not different from other states. It has its own fair share. The federal government has come up with the Livestock Transformation plan. About 100 billion is supposed to be allocated for that. Now, the confusion out there, what is the difference between the transformation plan and the RUGA itself? That's the rural grazing area. Some governors in the north are already adopting RUGA, and they're saying we're going ahead with RUGA. Is RUGA the same thing as transformation, the livestock transformation, or is it a complete and an entirely different plan itself?
I think there are two different plans. Coincidentally, I'm one of the governors, that came up strongly in support of the implementation of the RUGA project when I was told about it. I went to the Ministry of Agriculture and I was briefed about it. So, and therefore I went and embraced it and started the process of implementing it in Nasarawa State. Because Nasarawa is one of the 7 pioneer states for the NLTP. But then I think the only thing is that the NLPT is more comprehensive. It actually involves nearly everything RUGA wants to do. It is already in the transformation plan. So, and then because it is more comprehensive, it's also more widely represented. Nearly all the stakeholders are involved in it. So it's not something driven by the Ministry of Agriculture. The NLTP is actually being driven by the states themselves. Not driven by any other agency outside. Yes, it's being supported 80% by the federal government, but in reality, the ownership of it and the implementation and the driving is done by the various states. So that's the reason why it is more acceptable.
All right. Now let's go to climate. Climate grief as a result of climate change. Everybody has his own share. Everybody's grieving around the world. You're going to be at the United Nations, hopefully tomorrow, Monday, and then you're going to be seeing the biggest protest in the world, trying to save our environment. Coming back to your state, what is your policy as far as sanitation and environment is concerned? Because when you go to most state capital, the level of filth is so embarrassing, and you ask yourself, is there a government, existing in that particular state here?
In Nasarawa State, the first thing we did is we reintroduced the monthly sanitation program. We also went ahead and established an agency for purely waste management. So there is an agency that is in that. We also went ahead and have some kind of sensitization and a relationship with the new map, which is actually working towards all this erosion, degradation, and what is causing that, is exactly what you just said, a lot of filth that is the cause of some of those degradation and then erosion that we are seeing. Because most of the, locally again, in some of the state, in our state capital, where most of the roads construction were being carried out, the governor being from that sector, because he's been a former contractor, he's very familiar with architectural work and the rest of that. You will see the roads, have been built with very good drainages, very wide drainages, and then for that reason we don't have such problems in the state. So that's what we are doing. In Nasarawa State, we are doing the best we can to ensure that we accommodate that, and then we enlighten our people. We carry out a lot of advocacy, sensitization, for people to understand the dangers of climate change when it comes.
Are you looking at a situation where we have a recycling plant where you generate revenue from waste?
Yes. We are looking at not generating revenue from waste, converting waste actually to energy. We are talking to 2 companies at the moment. One company, private company, already established in Kefi, that is taking a lot of plastic waste and converting them into some kind of pellets. And we are also talking to another company that is going to take a lot of, domestic waste and also converting them into pellets that will be used as source of energy.
Okay. When you go to the United Nations, I'm sure you're going to be looking for investors to come and invest in your state so you can boost your revenue. What will be the particular potentials you'll be marketing to investors?
One is the competitive advantages that Nasarawa State has. When it comes to area of agriculture, we are one of the best. Not only because we have the wide area, but we have some of the best topography and the soil and the ready market. Because of our accessibility to the federal capital, our proximity to Abuja is just fantastic. So the population is there, for the market, and then the land is there, and then the labor is available, and the labor is cheap in Nasarawa State. So those are the kind of things that we are going to be marketing. Secondly is the area of solid minerals that we have in the state. Solid minerals itself is being controlled by the federal government, but the land belongs to the state. So we are working on some kind of relationship, with the federal government. Those who have licenses, we are encouraging them to come to Nasarawa State and work so that jointly we can be able to generate, employment opportunities for our people, and then secondly, revenue if it comes. So those are the two major areas that we are going to be marketing.
Okay, let's go back to the local government joint account. You did say that your local governments are already independent. Are you saying that they get their money directly from the federation account right now?
Absolutely. In Nasarawa State, from June, since we came in, they are autonomous. They get their money directly. They produce their template, how the money will be distributed, and they pay their salaries directly. So we only come in as oversight function. We come in to check and make sure what they are doing is right. We don't participate in what they do. Okay.
You did set up a committee on Economic Advisory Council, if I get that correctly. What exactly would that committee be doing? Because they don't have a Commissioner of Finance, isn't it?
Yeah, we can't have a Commissioner of Finance.
So, would it be a kind of duplication?
Definitely not. The federal government has advisory council. It's not that they don't have Minister of Finance. They are doing two different things. That's why we call it an advisory council. A commissioner is actually a full-time executive who implements. So most of the advices that are going to come from those, before we even set up the council, we develop our own strategy, economic strategy. And so driving the strategy will require a lot of support from people like that, who have the proper contact.
You pinpoint them, A, B, C, D. What are the strategies, economic strategies that you have?
Economic strategy is the process of how to develop the agricultural activities in the state, and it already started materializing. Today we have signed a 12,400 hectares of land that is going to go to Asman rice, for development of rice. It's in line with our strategy for the location that it is. Dangote is coming in addition to his 68,000 hectares for agriculture, is coming also to do another 50,000 on rice. It is in line with that. Our power generation is in line with our development plan, for hydropower and then coal power, and the rest of that. So those were the strategies, and then empowerment program that we have for our youth, our sports development that we have. They are all in line with the strategies that we brought. How are we going to approach them? Outside the traditional way of just saying that, okay, we have commissioner for sport, do it. He go ahead, at the end of the month you give him money, then he spends it on that. When the money is finished, is that. How is he going to generate his own revenue? How is he going to promote young talent? How are you going to send them out? How are they going to be source of revenue even for the state in that? So those are the kind of strategies that we have developed.
I was thinking that maybe you have some kind of strategy for education itself.
Definitely.
So that's supposed to be driving largely, especially the artificial intelligence.
No, on education we are not just going on the usual roller coaster general of education, because every state you go they will say we are promoting education. In Nasarawa State we are promoting more skill acquisitions, technical education, vocational education. We are trying to promote people who can be self-employed, and that's why we completed and commissioned our incubation center with 12 different shops: electrical, fitter machinists, welding, fabrication, tailoring, barbing, and the rest of that. So people that will be able to come, learn something, and go straight into application of that, so that they can be self-employed. So that is in that area. On other conventional ways of education, we are concentrating on professions that we don't have. Nasarawa State doesn't have enough qualified teachers, enough doctors, enough lawyers, so we are concentrating on that, and we are actually going into some kind of agreements with students who will go and learn that to come and work for us in Nasarawa State, at least for a certain period of time. Those are all parts of our strategy.
Are you also looking at rural education, which is in vogue right now? Rural education where people no longer stay in the conventional classroom. They have to go out to the environment, confront the challenges head on, and even understand it in the first place. Are you doing towards that direction?
Well, I think school acquisition should be part of that, because I just visited our Relevant Technology Center, for instance. That is a center that is not just teaching the students what to do, but they are practically producing something straight away that goes to the market. For instance, most of our primary schools, their furnitures that are there, they are being produced by these students themselves. So that's why I'm telling you, purely skill acquisition, vocational education, things that are real. Because for me, that's what I read. I read everything applied. That's what I was telling the other gentleman that came in. Because for my master's, I went into industrial professional technology. And in that, what we did was everything was applied. Applied physics, applied mathematics, applied chemistry, applied literature, and everything was applied, practical.
Okay. You quoted at the media, you did say that you don't believe state police will solve our problem. So if state police will solve our problem, considering the crisis that we have right now, the huge, enormous security challenge that we have now, I do know that the Inspector General of Police came up with the community policing, which he said would, which one do you think will really work for us?
I think community policing will definitely work for us. For us in Nasarawa, what we did is we have already started working with the traditional rulers, the local community, the local agencies, to engage, because they are the people that see some of these criminals come into their own communities to commit the kind of crimes. Nasarawa State is not like Lagos. Most of our places are very rural areas. So if any new visitor comes to town, people know the person has come to town. So we make it security being the responsibility of every individual that is there. Not necessarily just police. Police can only assist in maintaining peace and security. But the main security responsibility is in the hands of everyone that is around that location. So that's why we believe the community policing is going to be more relevant to us in Nasarawa, than having a state police.
Nasarawa, of course, is not like Lagos or kind of where you can generate a lot of revenue to drive your programs and policies. What are you going to be doing to make sure that you don't rely on the stipend that comes from the federal government, which we know with the withdrawal is going to dwindle down further?
Yeah, well, that's what we are saying. We are going to concentrate more on the industrialization of the state to make sure we have all these agro-allied industries within the state. Two, we want to go ahead with these empowerment programs of our people so that the people themselves are working and generating revenue, and we get the revenue from there. We are going to take advantage of our proximity to the federal capital. We are opening more roads in the areas, developing most of these industries, within these locations, especially in Karo local government, so that they can be the source of revenues also for us. So we are looking at all those various areas. That's why I mentioned the raw materials that I have mentioned to you, the solid minerals that I have mentioned to you earlier. If we can work with the solid minerals and develop them, that will be a source of revenue for us.
All right. Finally, 115 days in office as the executive governor, as a politician, when you compare that with your private life, how do you feel?
I knew what I left. When I made the decision that I was going to come into politics, I knew that I was going to come across an area that was completely different from what I was used to.
Is the water very murky?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. When it comes to accountability, government is a little bit more relaxed than what you see in the private sector. It's a situation where you just spend for services, and there are very little return. And this is a job also that is you never receive sufficient reward. People are not very thankful of what it is that you do. Very few people actually realize. So that's why you call it service, because it's a lot of sacrifice that you do. A lot of people will never see anything good, no matter how good you go about doing it, or how honest you do. Because that's what politics is all about. There are some people who share different political opinions with you, and they will never see any good in what you do. So that's the type of job it is. But you see, in the private sector, it's practical. You have a budget, you make the budget, you get rewarded, and then you move on. So that's the difference with governance. But I knew exactly what I was coming into before I came into it. So for me, I'm not. There are no regrets and no surprises.
Do you think the accountability drive will not backfire?
In some cases, it will. In some cases, one day, it's a bubble. I always tell people that it's a bubble. One day it will burst. A situation where a state does not fit into current scheme of pension that we have. and then you just withdraw and spend, and at the end of the day, there is nothing being reserved for those who are retiring, and if the usual monthly allocations are not coming, that's the day the bubble will burst.
Your Excellency, I'm afraid we just have to leave it here. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, His Excellency Engineer A.A. Sule. Do join us next week for another edition. From me, Medina Azaki, and the whole team here. Bye for now.